Okay.
Just,
Okay.
yeah. Oh dear. Just,
Okay.
yeah. Oh,
Let me turn that off so I don't hear myself in an echo constantly. So, better just start reading. And I tell you what might be worth doing. So I just put that there because I don't have two monitors. Okay, so I'm just going to proofread what I've done so far. So the cracks of the decrepit loft wept rainwater from above. Open veins of knotted wood left way for the droplets to gently slap the floorboards below, occasionally allowing gentle taps to break through the reverberated moans of the forgotten shack's timber frames. That's a bit wordy. Upon the heavily dusted boards of the attic knelt a young woman with porcelain features. Her pure white face grimaced in pain as a single tear fought free from her blackened eyes. Duvana stood and taught to Elder, the zealot witch chanted through the night. It roughly translated to the Elder, come dance and come scream, and was not a typical chant of effication. It was a dare. A taunt aimed at something that all but a few knew. A taunt aimed at something that all but a few knew. All but a few knew anything about. Knew even existed. A taunt aimed at something that all but a few knew even existed. The witch had taken heed of the warnings before she set off for the city. Her body would work differently when beckoning such a dark thing. Her wounds would not run dry. Her joints would creak. Her bones may soften, dry out, or even snap. What her mentors did not prepare her for, however, was the tricks that would play upon her senses. With bloodied wrists, her arms stretched out to the shadows that danced over the candle lights. They waltzed in time to the flickering flames, twitching spider webs, and the rhythm of her words. Her long matted hair teased the fire just out of reach of waxen wick. Duvane stood and taught to Elder. Invisible fingers brushed her lips with each word, as if ready to pounce down her throat. The smell of dust and smoke mulled into a sweet odor of sickness and death. The machinations in her peripherals distracted her with faceless smiles in the darkness. Whispers in the butchered language would encourage her and taunt her back. Would encourage and taunt her back. Would encourage her. Would encourage her and taunt her back. Her arm flinched at the laceration that appeared in the air, dousing one of the candlesticks as her blood sizzled in the flame. It appeared like a rip would in a piece of paper, and as her hands steadied themselves on the wooden boards below her, the hole tore larger, slowly at first, as if something was struggling to peel back the boundary between this place and its own. As she pulled back to ready herself, the invisible fingers took one last grasp, this time missing her lips and glancing delicately upon her cheek. Missing her lips and glancing delicately upon her cheek. Oh, come on, this keyboard is rubbish. She was expecting the sight of hands grasping at the ever-growing rip in the darkness, something demonic and clawed, but instead there was nothing but a scene behind it. Something shining and fantastical. It appeared otherworldly, something from the stars. A pit in the night sky, devouring the worlds and stars around it like water into a drain. It was entrancing, but as the darkest point began to dilate, realization hit the witch. This wasn't a celestial vision, but an eye. A giant eye peering into the new hole in its cell, and staring at the frail and bloodied body that created the window between them. Duvana student tot, she bravely exclaimed as the eye focused. The candles fought against the new rush of air that steadily blew from the other side. She tried to stand but failed as the large snap resonated through her body. She fell onto her side as bleached white bone burst from her thigh. She cried out as the pain almost blinded her vision. Elder, she panted, as the loss of blood finally began to take hold. Her body collapsed and she wrestled the chant out one final time. as a desperate death rattle. Hmm. The elder, come dance and come scream. As her eyelids fell and her body became limp, the other side disappeared. A final burst of air forced the candles to lose their battle. The amused whispers rang through her ears once more in the last moments, and finally replied. Shall disorder elder, shall varnish, Sheldon tot. They have stirred the elder, they will dance, and they will scream. Okay, that's not bad. Right, I've no time for your fuckery, Samsel. The stout merchant belched up the dregs of his tankard as he snapped at his employee, who had clearly nursed her own drink. A third of a pint remained in her own cup. You'll drink that up now, or I'm having it. The merchant was a bald and stout man of the West. He let his hands fall from his aged face, which displayed the deep ridges one might have from a life of laughter, or more likely, in Samsel's case, regular frowning through his furrowed brow. He dried his ale-damp beard with the sleeve of his oversized tunic and looked to his partner in crime. A young lass from the shores, with a beautiful yet withered face. Samsel hid her long black hair beneath a modest coif. Coif? Coif, I think. You wouldn't think I wrote this. She allowed her eyes to beam with a sense of enthusiasm, allowing the light to shine against the mild greens and dilated pupils. Hmm. She allowed her eyes to beam with a sense of enthusiasm, allowing the light greens to shine against. Allowing the light to shine against the mild greens. Lazing. Hmm. I don't know. She allowed her eyes to beam with a sense of enthusiasm, allowing the light to shine against the mild greens. Mild greens and glazed. It's alright for now. Come on, man, one more for the road. You've got to admit it's lovely here. Samsel waved a cup in front of Bellin in an attempt to entice, before taking another pathetic sip. We've sold you wares, you've made a killing. We deserve to enjoy ourselves before we leave. You've been enjoying yourself too much, you little shite. Bellin pretended not to be tempted, as he lazily brushed the cup away. Samsel chuckled. She knew it was only a matter of time before her boss. Yeah, before her boss. Before her boss, come on, you keyboard. Before her boss would flag one of the staff for another round, and she cared little that this one would be hers to pay for. If we haven't reached the western shores by tomorrow morning, we'll get caught on a busy trail, and then we'll both get shafted for being late. Yeah, I get that, but we could set off in like, what, 2 hours, and we'd still be well on our way to being early. Samsel's bartering skills came in useful when she was working the stall, but even more so when she was working Bellin over for another drink. Bellin stroked his thick beard in contemplation, and at that point Samson knew she had won. However, she was honest enough to sweeten the pot. Plus, you've hardly paid. Plus, you've paid for 3 rounds. I've only paid for 2. That's hardly fair on you. Bellin had already raised the attention of the bar hand before Samsel had even finished the pitch. If we get back late and I get an earful, I swear to God I'll throw you under the cart. After Samsel's first victory, it was much easier to talk Bellin into a 7th round and an 8th. And even an 8th. What is going on with this keyboard? Oh, what is going on here? It was at this point that Bellin got into the swing of things and pissily discovered that this outdoor tavern had a house special, which of course they had to try. They called this the Moran Rattlers. Bellin had given up on the service of the tavern staff and had chosen to harass the barman directly for these drinks. They differed greatly from the foamy beer that the two had been quaffing up to this point. Instead of a hefty wooden tankard, these drinks were in slim, yet tall cups made of hollowed out horn. A thick black sugared spirit replaced the gold and bubbling beer. They both should have known better by the name alone. After all, its namesake, the Moran Rattlers, was a well-known and deadly variant of snake which could grow to the length of up to 15 feet and would tower over any man, woman, or child that was unfortunate enough to stumble into the Moran Mountains. They both agreed that the sweet yet smoky concoctions went down a treat, but it didn't take long for the Rattlers to bite. The rest of the session was a haze, and it wasn't until the fresh night air of the streets hit them that they were on their way home, somehow without forgetting the horse and cart. Okay. Mm. The two agreed after a few ill-conceived shortcuts leading to dead ends and a moment of navigational loss that they were indeed going to arrive home much later than planned. In the black of night and still within the city streets, Bellin began to formulate several plausible excuses. You need to relax, Bellin. You just pissed is all. Pissed is an understatement, you twat. I'm nothing but alcohol from base to bollock. Samsel couldn't help but chuckle at a partner in crime during his mild panic. That was a lovely establishment, though, he sighed. They began to exchange complimentary remarks about the tavern and its beverages as they tried to find their way through the city streets and its maze-like layout. The conversation died somewhat as they found themselves in a massive open square. The buildings around it were much more intricate and high-class in comparison to the cramped terrace homes that they'd shambled through before. "This is the council square," Samsel exclaimed with relief. "We know where we are now. Look, that's the city chambers, and over there's the mayoral estate. That means—" As Samsel tried to reclaim a sense of direction, Bellin's eyes remained fixed upon the estate that his friend had pointed towards. He was sure he saw a glint of sorts upon the roof of the home, which was extravagant and covered in pale white stone and healthy trellised vines. Trellised vines. Extravagant. I've already mentioned extravagant. Uh, much more intricate. Okay, no, I haven't. Okay. As he was about to lose interest and turn back, another small flash appeared. As he looked closer and slowly made his way towards the home, he saw a shadow moving slowly upon the tiles. "Samsel, we need to find someone on patrol." Samsel pulled herself away from her drunken planning and looked to the mayoral estate. Her eyes, which were sharper than her older counterparts, could see the shape with more clarity. White robes, metal boots, a barely visible mask. She grabbed a friend as he tried to step away for help. "What are you doing?" Bellin snapped in a panicked whisper. "Someone's breaking into the mayor's house." "That's not a thief, Bellin." Samsel was as pale as a dreamed corpse, even in the dark of night. "It's an executioner." Bellin stopped wrestling and looked back to the figure, which now stood tall outside a window that was now slightly ajar. As he fought through the haze of the alcohol, his vision had eventually focused. He could see the white robes which swayed in the gentle breeze. The moonlight glanced off armored boots and gauntlets, and an expressionless mask of silver looked towards the two as they stared back in fear. "A copulous executioner?" Bellin struggled to ask without stuttering. "We need to get out of here and let them do their thing." Samsel turned to the cart and began leading the horse with haste. "Come on, Bellin, let's go home," she demanded. Bellin couldn't help but to get one more glance before he followed in shock, but this time the figure had disappeared. Nothing remained other than the now fully opened window and its elegant red curtain, not carpet, elegant red curtain playing with the breeze. Okay, it's all right. Okay, so the first chapter. The elder star lit the cloudless morning skies above the capital. The city stone embraced its glow whilst the shallow dust danced with crisp brown leaves upon the cobbles. A rare dry day allowed the stall owners and travelling merchants to wave customers through the deep veins of Alviette with ease. Those with coin to spare would glide around those without, glancing upon goods from all over the island continent whilst avoiding the eyes of those selling. It was hard to turn down the business of a Venetian merchant, and as soon as you acknowledged their presence, the dealings began. Those with more sense than wealth did what they could to wade through these streets. Travelling from wall to wall would take a day, and getting caught in the wrong thoroughfare at the wrong time would extend that considerably. The sensible planned accordingly, but the brave or daft would use the dire alleys. This was not their official name, of course, but well suited considering the criminality that would often take place within their depths. The, dec- the hectic disorientation of the city would wash away when travelling from south to north, as there was truly little need for merchants and travellers to venture past the capital's northern gate. A day's travel beyond was a forest, and 2 days' journey through the thick salted mist and dark dense trees was the Moran Mountains. They look over themselves up there and rarely deal with the world beyond their hunting grounds. In a cottage within the northern boundaries of the capital, Theniel grasped the porcelain sink in his kitchen and oversaw his garden as it danced in the autumnal breeze. He found himself at this window a lot recently, as the serene view outside let his mind wander. The young man was once again within a memory from a few years prior, when he and his brother Keller were in that garden celebrating. Keller was chosen to lead Alviette that day, and Theniel was chosen to lead the city guard, captain of the Valetian fencers. It was a day of paperwork, meetings, and darting from cramped offices to cold marble chambers, but in the evening light they sat outside Theniel's cottage and drank. The hesitation and nerves of the day were left at the garden gate, and they laughed along with family and passers-by alike into the early hours of the next morning. Keller slept at the kitchen table that night, an empty wine glass lazily grasped by his almost lifeless. Keller slept at the kitchen table that night, an empty wine glass lazily grasped by his almost lifeless fingers. Theniel's wife Violet chuckled drunkenly as she helped him to bed. Yeah, go on then. Theniel's wife Violet chuckled drunkenly as she helped him to bed, and with one last glance to his brother, his pride settled deep into his chest. He blinked away the memory and sharply exhaled with a heavy heart as he heard Violet moving through their home. The young man turned to smile at his wife as she entered the room, trying to ignore the same kitchen table that lingered behind her. I told you, those black vines have been on their last legs for weeks now. They're not going to start growing just because you stare at them every morning, she smiled. Daniel laughed as he kissed her on the cheek. It's time we get going. You know I don't mind going on your behalf if you... It's fine, he sighed, grabbing a heavy burlap sack from beside the kitchen door. Plus, all of this is bloody heavy. I'm pretty sure it's all here, but I might as well check again. Even with his back turned as he hunched over the sack, he could sense Violet shaking her head behind him. He didn't blame her. He must have already checked a dozen times that morning alone. Boots, gloves, and uniform, all tailored from the highest quality ratless leather. All present, all still accounted for. He was hoping that by the end of the day it would still be his to bring back home, but he doubted greatly. Hmm. It would still be his to bring back, but he doubted greatly. The walk to the center of the city began with earthy trails carved out by caravans and hooves, and ended with dark cobbles and paved stones. As they made their way into the heart of the city, the chimes of the capital bells could be heard, signaling the prohibition of trade within the areas surrounding the council halls. This was procedure when voting was to begin for a new mayor, and upon the death of a member of office. But this was the first time Nathaniel could recall where the bells were rung to signal both occasions in unison. Yeah, okay. That's okay. So we've got Theniel, we've got Violet. Got Keller, the brother. Okay. I think that all makes sense. Uh, just want to double check to see how it looks, and then I might call it there. I'm gonna have to pause myself quickly so I don't hear myself because I hear my own voice. Oh, that camera's showing up. Okay. So how do I hide that? Uh, edit layout. No. Okay, I'll call it there. Call it there for now. Right.